Folks gathered in the market square, drawn by the promise of livestock, tools, and something stranger. Her name was Kate Wynn, 22 years old. Her blue dress faded at the seams and her hands clenched at her sides as if she were holding something in. Her father shoved her into the center of the square like meat on display. "She can cook, sew, and keep quiet," he said. "Anyone with coin can take her home tonight." The crowd didn't laugh, not loudly at least, but the silence between the murmurs was worse. Women looked away and children peeked from behind skirts. Kate stood there with the sun burning her skin and shame burning worse beneath it. "She's barren," her father continued. "Tried for years and nothing happened. But she's got steady hands and teeth in her head. That counts for something." Kate didn't plead. She had done that before. She pleaded once when her husband threw her out after 2 years of trying, and once when her wedding dress was torn from her by hands that used to hold her. It hadn't mattered then, so she stood in silence. Near the back of the crowd, her mother stood with a worn shawl pulled tight, eyes fixed on the ground and lips pressed into a line. She didn't speak or stop it, she just watched. And when the crowd finally parted, she drifted away with them, swallowed by the flow of people as if she hadn't come to watch her daughter be sold. A man stepped forward, broad-shouldered, his shirt stiff with dust and trail wear. A wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow over most of his face, and his coat smelled of horse and pine. He didn't ask her name, and he didn't look her over like a buyer. He simply reached into his coat, pulled out a leather pouch, and dropped coin on the table. No bartering, no questions. Her father raised an eyebrow. "You sure? She don't come with a refund." The man didn't flinch. "She won't be judged anymore," he said. Then he turned and walked away. Kate didn't move until her father gave her one last push. "Go on, you're his now." She bent to pick up her satch, just a pair of old shoes and a locket with her mother's face inside, and followed the stranger into the dust. The wagon waited near the blacksmith's, hitched to a pair of mules as quiet as their owner. Kate climbed into the front, settling beside the stranger without a word. She didn't know his name was Bo Thatcher, not yet. "Long ride," Bo said, handing her a dented canteen. The water tasted like tin and old wind. They rolled out past the edge of Ash Ridge, where the prairie opened like a page waiting to be written on. The sky went on forever, and the fence posts leaned tired into the earth. He didn't speak again, and she didn't ask. Kate studied his face when the brim of his hat lifted just enough. He wasn't old, but the sun had etched its history into his skin, 35 maybe. His hands rested loose on the reins, one scarred across the knuckle, another wrapped with a strip of torn cloth. No ring. "Why'd you take me?" she asked, not expecting an answer. He didn't look over. 5 kids, no mother, no time. Her throat caught. "So I'm a governess?" "No," he replied. "Just someone not cruel. That's enough." By dusk, they reached a ranch tucked into the dry ribs of the land. The house leaned slightly westward as if it were listening for something that never came. A weathered gray barn stood behind it, and chickens darted through the yard as the wagon pulled in. Bo stepped down, tied off the reins, and walked to the porch without asking if she'd follow. She did. The porch boards creaked under her weight, and the front door was nothing more than a thick quilt nailed to the frame to keep the wind out. Inside, 5 faces looked up, 4 boys and 1 girl, all wide-eyed and red-cheeked in the half-light. They had lost their mother to a fever 2 winters back, and since then the silence in that cabin had been louder than any storm. "This is Kate," Bo said. "She'll be staying." The youngest, Samson, maybe 5 years old, walked straight to Bo and wrapped both arms around his leg. Bo scooped him up and pointed toward the stairs. "Room's upstairs. Water's in the bucket, still warm." Kate climbed the stairs slowly, her hand trailing the wall. The bedroom was small and plain, a wash basin, a narrow bed, and a window looking out toward an open field of dry grass. She set her satchel down and sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't cry, not yet, but her hands trembled in her lap as she stayed there, listening to the sounds of strangers in a house that wasn't hers, not yet. Morning brought the smell of smoke, old coffee, and something burning in the pan. The cabin stirred early with footsteps on creaking boards and the thud of boots by the door. Kate moved carefully, not yet knowing the rhythm of the house. The children stayed quiet around her. Judah, the eldest, watched her with folded arms and a look too old for his age. Levi whispered to Gideon, while Mira, the only girl, sat near the fire clinging to a scrap of fabric. Her first attempts at chores were a disaster. The beans turned to paste, the bread wouldn't rise, and she spilled the coffee pod, burning her hand. Later, she tried sewing a ripped sock and jabbed her finger twice. She said nothing, only pressed her lips together and swept the floor until her shoulders ached. That afternoon, while lifting a pot of stew, her grip slipped. The cast iron crashed to the floor, splattering stew across the boards. Kate stood still, heart pounding, waiting for the shout or the snap she had heard so many times before. Then the front door opened. Bo stepped in, looked at the mess, and then at her. Without a word, he crouched, picked up the pot, and wiped the floor with a towel. "It's just stew," he said, and that was it. He walked back outside. Kate stayed frozen for another minute, the rag still in her hand. The heat rising in her throat this time wasn't shame. It was something quieter, something she didn't yet have a name for. That night, after the children had disappeared into their rooms, she sat on the porch. The night air was cool and stars burned clean above the roofline. She tried not to cry, but she failed. Later, as she crept from room to room, she saw Mira shivering. The girl's forehead felt too warm. Kate stepped into the hall and found Bo already there. "She's burning," Kate said. "I need willow bark and mint, if you have it." He didn't ask questions. Within minutes, she had everything. She boiled water, crushed herbs, and pressed damp linens to Mira's face. She cradled the girl's small frame and hummed, staying up all night even as her own body sagged with exhaustion. By dawn, Mira opened her eyes and whispered hoarsely, "Pancakes." Bo stood in the doorway. He didn't say a thing, but the tension in his shoulders eased. His eyes stayed fixed on Kate as if he were seeing something holy. The next morning, Kate found a tin mug and a piece of paper on the kitchen table. 2 words were scratched in stiff, uneven handwriting. "Thank you." There was no signature, but it didn't need one. She held the note longer than she meant to, sipping the sharp pine-bitter tea. Through the window, the prairie stretched out and something long kept shut in her began to shift. As spring settled into the bones of the land, the rhythm of the cabin changed. Kate's hands found their steadiness. She stitched feed sacks into scarves for each child and taught them letters by candlelight. She learned their fears. Judah hated thunder, Levi lied when he was embarrassed, and Mira grew quiet when she missed her mother. They didn't ask who she was, they watched what she did. The first time one of them called her Mama, it came out like breathing. Levi passed her a spoon and muttered, "Here, Mama." The room went still, but no one corrected him. Soon they all said it. She was Mama now. No ceremony, just the slow naming of what already was. One night, Bo asked her, "You ever think about leaving?" Kate paused. "I did. A while back." "Why didn't you?" "For the first time in my life," she said. "No one's asking me to be anything I'm not." The town of Dustbend was a dry, sun-bleached place. Kate hadn't set foot there since the day she was sold. When they returned for supplies, she encountered her past in the form of her former mother-in-law and the new pregnant wife. "Pretty but cursed," the older woman drawled, loud enough for the market to hear, useless as a cracked jar. Kate stood still, jaw set, but then a shadow fell beside hers. Bo had stepped out of the store. He looked at the women only once before turning to Kate. "She's the one who gets Mira to sleep when her legs ache," he said firmly. "The one who taught Samson not to throw rocks, the one who makes that house feel like it has a roof again." They walked away together, leaving the cruel words behind them like dust. Their life was defined by these quiet protections. When a drunken trapper named Clavon harassed Kate at the well, Bo didn't hesitate to defend her with his fists. When Gideon nearly lost his leg in an axe accident, Kate was the one who stayed steady, binding the wound and breathing in the name Mama like a prayer. Eventually, Bo offered her a choice. When I put that money down in Ash Ridge, I figured maybe I was giving you a way out. I never thought I had a right to keep you. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. Kate looked at him, seeing the man who had chosen her when she was at her lowest. I used to think love meant being chosen at first sight, she said. But I've learned something better, being chosen again, after someone's seen who you really are. If you're not sending me away, then I'm not going. Hardship continued. A summer drought brought 7 weeks of pale, cruel skies. The crops withered and the children went hungry. Kate fought the earth, digging into the ash-dry soil until she made space for a garden. She watered it with her own sweat and sang to the dying vines. When Bo collapsed from heat exhaustion, she nursed him back, staying by his side until the fever broke. Their perseverance bore fruit, a single imperfect red tomato. "How?" Bo asked, looking at her blistered hands. "You taught me," Kate whispered. "Not everything worth keeping comes easy." Years passed, and the world tried to intrude. Government contractors came with maps and promises of railroad money, wanting to cut through their ridge. Bo didn't even look at their papers. "I'm not selling," he said. He and Kate hammered a sign into the ground at the edge of their property. Burned into the grain were the words, "Not for sale." Time moved like weather, slow and certain. The children grew tall and left to start lives of their own, but they always returned. The house never emptied. It simply filled with new laughter and the footsteps of grandchildren. Every morning, Bo would watch Kate move through her sprawling garden, witnessing the miracle of her presence. One autumn afternoon, Bo's grandson asked why the garden gate had a special carving. The words read, "She did not bear my blood, but she gave birth to the rest of my life." "She gave me everything," Bo told the boy. She gave pitié. When Kate Wynn passed, they buried her beneath the old oak tree. Bo carved her headstone himself. Here grew everything she was never given, and all that she gave anyway. He joined her not long after, buried beside her beneath the whispering branches. The garden kept growing, coiling up the porch rails and reaching toward the sun long after they were gone. Travelers still passed the fence of the land where Bo and Kate made their home, slowing their wagons to read the weathered sign that remains. "Not for sale." Because sometimes a place remembers those who refuse to leave, and sometimes dry hills bloom for the ones who choose love when no one else would. This has been a story from Dust and Heart Western Tales.